Hello and welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Welcome to In the Know, a program that helps you to stay informed. Joining me from the Massachusetts Office on Disability, I have Mary Mayan McCauley. She's the Executive Director, and Lilia Mulakshi, who is the Communication and Training Manager. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This program, Mary, we'll start with you, was actually prompted by you. You, of course, know of Quincy Access Television and have been in Quincy Access Television in the past, but it's been a while, and we thought, you thought, and I agreed, that we should do a program on what this office on city government is all about.
The Massachusetts Office on Disability, we're a state agency. So we are under the Executive Office of Administration and Finance within the Executive Office of the Commonwealth. And we're a relatively small agency with 15 people when we're fully staffed in total. And we are the disability agency of the Commonwealth. We are not a service delivery or a benefits program agency, but we are really able to answer questions regarding individual civil rights, as far as civil rights for a person with disabilities, and help people to navigate their way through state government with a variety of different things. We focus on sharing information, giving a guidance, and also training for people with disabilities and others, including all other stakeholders. So we work closely with other executive offices within the state government. We also work with municipalities across the entire state of Massachusetts. And, we really do quite a bit for an agency with 15 people overall. We have various divisions within the agency.
And talk about your involvement. Sure. I believe it was the prior administration where you became the executive director of this office?
Yes. I actually, I'm just as an aside, I'm a lifelong resident of Quincy, so, I was familiar with Quincy Access TV and thought this would be a good way to get information out about Mass Office on Disability. But as far as my personal career, I began working for the state of Massachusetts for the Commonwealth in 1989 with a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling. I worked for Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission as a voc rehab counselor, as job placement specialist, supervisor, and then area director. And then in 2019, under the previous administration, Governor Baker appointed me to be the executive director of Mass Office on Disability. So I've been in this role for about 4 years now, and I really love it. And I think one of my main objectives within this role was to let people know within the state, outside of the state, within the government, inside and outside, to stakeholders, which include all the residents and visitors of Massachusetts, really let them know who we are and what we do. Because we have a very important role within the Commonwealth, and getting the information out of what we do is really important of how we can help individuals and people around various aspects of disability.
You had mentioned the previous administration. Mm-hmm. When did you meet, when was your first meeting with Governor Maura Healey?
Actually, Governor Healey, I've been at several meetings with the people on the cabinet, with the executive office individuals. And my first meeting with Governor Healey was previous to her becoming the governor. It was when she was still the Attorney General. And actually, as the Attorney General, they had an open house, a meeting that had to do with disability. And the month of October is traditionally the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So during that month, several years ago, it may have been 2019 actually, I met her as the Attorney General when she was, focusing on Disability Month and talking about the Attorney General's office.
Lilia, I do want to turn to you and maybe talk about your background and what brought you to the Massachusetts Office on Disability.
Sure. So prior to coming to MOD, I worked in communications at Massachusetts Advocates for Children, which is a nonprofit in Boston that does a lot of special education work. So I have a background in disability services and a real love for that, and came to MOD because of the great work that they do informing people of their rights, which, coming from that legal aid background, I know is so important.
How does the Massachusetts Office on Disability define disability?
Yeah, so at MOD, we're working primarily with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. So we use that definition. And the ADA defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So it's a really broad definition, and it's really focused more on how your disability impacts your life and may create barriers to living life fully. So that's what we use. But different government programs may define disability differently. There's a wide number of ways you may define disability, but that's the way we're using it at our office.
When we talk about contacting your department, phone numbers, there are two. There's also a website, so possibly they'll be on screen momentarily if they're not already. There they are. So mass.gov/MOD.
Yes.
What would folks find on that site?
So on our website, you can find our full training menu with all of our training offerings. You can sign up for our email list to get information about upcoming trainings and events and our newsletter. And you can also contact us online using our online contact form. Or you can call us at 617-727-7440 or toll free at 800-322-2020.
There's some really wonderfully written information. One particular article is about navigating around state government. So there's a lot of good things to read on the website.
How connected are you to other municipalities, I suppose, or aware of legislation in other municipalities?
Let me talk about, as far as connected to other municipalities, one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is really important, we have an ADA municipal improvement grant, and this year we had $4 million, and we open it up in the summer. It's usually in August, closes in September. And the cities and towns around the entire state are able to apply for planning or project grants through our agency to be able to reduce barriers for people with disabilities around the state. And as a matter of fact, Quincy received one of our grants a couple of fiscal years ago. And what they did with that grant was put in an elevator at the Snug Harbor School in Germantown. And so that is something that happens every year. Next year it will be $5 million for FY25, and it will go up to $7 million in FY27. So there's, for all types of projects that city and towns have, planning grants to put together a new or improved self-evaluation and transition plan.
There's three key ways that we support municipalities to advance accessibility at the local level. So we work really closely with municipal ADA coordinators who are responsible for ADA compliance at the municipal level. We provide them with training and information and walk them through their roles and responsibilities and how to be successful at that. The second way is through our ADA improvement grant, so providing reimbursement funding to municipalities for accessibility planning and projects. And then we also work closely with local commissions on disability, which are volunteer groups who are responsible for listening to the needs of the local disability community and making those voices heard at the local level. And so we help those commissions get started, set their goals, and be effective in the work that they do.
What's a great example of something that the MOD does?
So I love telling people this. So for example, we were receiving a lot of calls about elevators and elevators being broken in buildings, and people with disabilities who needed an elevator to access their apartment not being able to because the elevator was down. So we were getting calls both from renters who said, I can't get into my apartment, this elevator is broken, and from housing providers who said, I know I have a tenant with a disability who needs this, but the elevator is down, it's not going to be able to be fixed for a while, what do I do? And so we were really able to talk to everyone involved in that situation to say, well, here's what the law says, here's what the housing provider is responsible for in different situations, depending on how long the elevator is out, and to the tenant, here's what your rights are, here's what you can do, who you can call to make sure your needs are being met in the meantime. And then because we were getting so many calls about it, we also put out a webpage with guidance on that that's really aimed at both sides of the story there.
You connect so many people and work with so many different individuals that it seems a necessity. And what's the history of the office in Massachusetts?
The office began in 1981. That was the beginning of Mass Office on Disability. And a major piece of what we had done for years was answer lots and lots of questions that people would have coming in. And I think that's why we're being so clear about the questions we don't answer now, because we're trying to really focus on our main objectives, which is really to share, and clarify what are the civil rights for individuals with disabilities. We had a disability law handbook that was out for years. It was a paper hard copy. And right now we're working on that law by law by law and putting all the information into the website so we can have examples so that it's nice and up to date and more current for 2023, and that we can change it and correct it and continually work on it and use examples that are more in the now happening. Back in 1981, even though the definitions were a little different of disability, the ADA wasn't passed yet. The ADA wasn't passed until 1990. So as MOD has become more mature, and the whole disability movement has moved on, and actually the digital world has increased, post-COVID times, and we've had to communicate with each other much more often. It's been virtual. We've really had to look at how can people with disabilities join in the world within the virtual environment. And that's why the digital access is so much more important than it was, is because it's always been important, but COVID really shed a light on the fact that if people have physical limitations or other kinds of limitations or transportation barriers and can't get to the public meetings, they should be able to have access to their local government. So if they need to get access in a digital way, can the government accept them into the meetings? Is it with Zoom? Is it with other platforms? And so we're trying to work more on making the digital environment more accessible for all. The digital environment is where we are now. The built environment and the ramps back in 1970s, 1980s, that's where we were then. So things move forward to include inclusion for all, really, including all with disabilities.
Yeah, and there are a lot of disability agencies, and there are a lot of great laws on the books to protect people with disabilities, but I think they can only go so far if people don't understand them. So that's really where we come in.
We answer kind of the civil rights kind of question. So if a person had a question about their disability and it was very disability specific, and how would this affect me? Like, for instance, someone might call us and say, I have a particular disability. Like I myself, I happen to be blind. One of my disabilities. I'm also in recovery from substance use disorder. I've been in recovery since my 20s. And, if I was on the outside calling MOD, I might call and say, these are my disabilities. I'm going to an interview. And, what should I disclose for my interview? Or what might be some of the reasonable accommodations that I could be qualified to get? like one of our trainings that we have we have one program, we have several programs. One is the client assistance program, and under that program, we have training on disclosure, which has to do specifically with disclosing a disability. So they would answer things like, when would you disclose, or how would you disclose in the area of like a job, looking for a job placement, being in a job search. And also there's another training that complements that one on reasonable accommodations and what your reasonable accommodation might be. So we may help a person like write a letter, like, or how do you talk to someone to request a reasonable accommodation? Who do you talk to? Those type of things. But as far as if someone was looking for some specific housing, they would contact housing. If they were applying for Social Security, that's another agency.
Which is a common misconception.
Exactly. Yes.
Is the association with Social Security. They're two separate.
Absolutely. And Social Security Administration being a federal agency, a person applies for it through Social Security Administration, and then there's a state agency called Disability Determination Services that works with them to determine that. But we don't have records of who's qualified for this program or that program.
People with disabilities face a number of barriers, right? Some related to disability and some not. So we do get calls from people, if you're facing an eviction or
So
you're
housing.
looking for housing, there are some laws around housing related to disability, but many of them aren't, and you may be better served reaching out to a housing office, for example. So it can get a little bit complicated, but that's one thing that we do as well, is help people understand, what exactly their issue is, communicating that to the appropriate government agency or organization.
The Massachusetts Architectural Access Board is one of the boards that we sit on, and it's really a big part of my job, and one of my assistant directors, Jeffrey Dugan, who sits on the board, who's really in the know about architectural access. That board we meet twice a month, every other week for a full day, and cities and towns are it's not necessarily the city or town, but individual buildings, they might be requesting a variance not to put in a certain type of architectural, they need to do certain things within a building so that it will be accessible, to make the buildings, inclusive for all, so people with all types of physical limitations. And they may have a variance to be requesting something's a little different, and they would come through the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. So we are currently, that same person I mentioned, Jeffrey, is now working with folks from MAB and some others on rewriting the regulations for the Mass Architectural Access Board.
The word training has come up several times, so I'm going to turn to you and talk about the training. And again, a big part of what your office does, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So part of our mission of having people know their rights and their obligations, how to comply with these disability rights laws, is providing training. So we provide trainings on the ADA. We also provide, our client assistance program provides trainings. So that program, which Mary mentioned, advocates for people who are interested in or who are currently receiving vocational rehabilitation or independent living services. And so they provide regular online workshops for people. They have a disability and employment series, so that covers disclosing your disability at work and answers questions like,
Which
at
Mary
what
had
point
talked
should you disclose? What are the pros and cons of disclosing? And we also talk through requesting a reasonable accommodation at work if you may need one to perform your job duties. And so they talk about that, and also recognizing disability discrimination in the workplace and what to do if that's something that you're noticing. So that's one of our more popular training offerings, I would say.
In the client assistance program, they specifically work on helping market those two major offerings, really, for disability, for people with disabilities, which is vocational rehabilitation. Both the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind and the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission have vocational rehab divisions where they help individuals with different types of disabilities towards the goal of employment. And then the independent living services, which there are 10 around the state of Massachusetts, help people with disabilities with independent living needs. They do a lot of advocacy with government. They also help people with just learning how to live independently. They have housing workshops. They assist people in a variety of ways, and it's all towards the goal of independent living.
Mary, you had mentioned partnerships early on.
Yeah.
Talk about those partnerships.
We actually have several partnerships with a lot of agencies within the executive office. Like, one thing I don't want to not say, but we oversee as the ADA coordinator. We oversee, my general counsel Julia O'Leary oversees, and the agency does, all the ADA coordinators in all of the agencies within the secretariats of the Commonwealth. So, that gets a little complicated for people because the state, it's a large bureaucracy, but basically every agency has an ADA coordinator, and we help with the training of that. So that's really quite a partnership with each of the agencies. We also work closely with other organizations and agencies of the state. For instance, we're on the 911 Commission. We sit on the Massachusetts Developmental Disability Council. We're on various commissions of the state. And the very new one is, during the summer, the new administration, Governor Healy, signed Executive Order 614, which is really an order. The executive order is for a governance board to look at equity with digital offerings. So within the digital world, for both the public facing, so anything that you look up things on the computer, to look up your services, to sign up for things within the state, all of that has to be accessible. And of course, the everything that is being looked at as far as within virtual, every digital offering within the state that the employees are looking at. So we have a new governance board that oversees that. And there's a chief executive that will be covering the digital governance of the entire Commonwealth. So each one of the secretariats will also have someone responsible for that.
Your role, if there is one, with legislation.
We are the subject matter experts for disability-related civil rights laws for the Commonwealth, right? So any kind of legislation, once it's passed, we can help people understand what it means for them and how it might apply to them and their situation in their life. And, businesses, municipalities understand how to comply with those new laws and existing laws and architectural access regulations as well, right? There's a whole maze of laws and regulations, and it can be difficult to understand without MOD stepping in and providing that. One of our training offerings is our personal emergency preparedness program, and so those trainings are designed for individuals with disabilities to learn how to prepare themselves for a number of different emergency situations, and so they can have an emergency plan that's accessible for them.
You work with the folks in the disability community to understand that legislation.
We don't comment on pending legislation, we don't lobby, but we do help everyone, including legislators, understand what these things mean.
We help, I would say, more than helping individuals understand any bills that are out there currently that have been passed. It's more of helping them to understand the current Massachusetts and federal laws.
Once they become
Yes,
law.
correct. Yes.
Understood.
Yes.
If you visit our website, you can call our number, or we have a contact form on the website if you'd like to contact us online.
Okay, very good. Thank you both. And thank you at home for watching. And please to remember to support local access television in the community in which you reside. Take care.
Thank you.